Greetings, race fans, and welcome to Apex Racing TV's presentation of the Radical Racing Challenge. J.R. Gregory here on the call. Beside me in the booth, Ron Mons in the production booth, our friend and colleague Joshua Wilkie. We're jumping into this one at the last minute due to a couple of last-minute technical issues, but there is the green. We are at Donington Park in the UK. Kike Ming is your pole sitter, and he's going to get away clean. He's got Friedrich, Vieira, Barry sniffing around with him. Ming is going to hold his lead into very difficult turn one. And Ron, this is my absolute favorite part of the course right here. We'll see how these radicals handle this on cold tires. The mad dash down the hill here into this right-hander. Critical not to overslow, but critical not to overcook it. And whew! All right, we got this one underway. And Ron, what are your thoughts as we're starting week one here in season 4, 2023 Radical Racing Challenge from Donington Park?
Well, my thoughts go out to Jorge Gonzaga, who had some kind of spin coming out of the old hairpin, but as you mentioned, that's a very important corner on this circuit in our experience driving it, certainly speaking on my behalf. That's a very tricky corner to get right, and this is another very tricky corner because it's one of the heaviest, if not the single heaviest braking zone on this entire circuit. Going into the chicane where you got to thread the eye of the needle with a very bumpy run coming through that chicane. It's very difficult for these drivers. But besides that mistake we saw from Jorge Gonzaga, who was running in the top 10 and has now dropped down to 15th, it's a very clean start so far.
Yeah, and it's looking good here as we finish. Lap number 1, Ming is going to maintain his P1. He started in pole. Friedrich still at P2 with a growing gap from him up to Ming, 1.3 seconds now. So it's Ming from Friedrich. Vieira, I see a cloud of smoke there on that tricky, tight second gear left-hander coming back onto the straightaway. But it's Ming from Friedrich, Vieira, Barry, Kiolis, Woodward, Carusa, McIntyre, Hanoi, and Groff will be your top 10. Then G, Curtis, Ma, Gonzaga, Robertson, Doyes, Wire, Larson, and it looks like Snyder may have bent it. Not sure what happened to him, but he is showing on timing and scoring in pit lane. And folks, just a quick overview here if you're just joining us for the first time. And here's Friedrich under pressure from Vieira. Vieira is going to get through there. Vieira up into P2. But very quickly, folks, we are showing the top split of the public lobby of the Radical Racing Challenge. If you would like to try your hand at these 425 horse, 700 odd kilo sports racers, they are an absolute blast. Ron and I took them out for a flog here this afternoon in preparation for the broadcast. They feel great on this track, and mastery of the Radical will make you a master of any car that you get into. So if you'd like to give this a try, join us next Friday and every Friday at this time, 2100 GMT, and you can be on Apex Racing TV testing your mettle against some of the best esports drivers in the world. And here as we're finishing lap 2, we've got Ming from Vieira, Friedrich, Barry, and Kiolis. And we'll go to a quick replay here. I think we're going to see Vieira's overtake of Friedrich, and you see Friedrich going wide, getting a little grass there out of that difficult right-hander at the bottom of the hill that Ron and I were discussing. And that is going to allow Vieira through. And frankly, Friedrich lucky not to be picking that car out of the tires right there.
Yeah, that is a very easy corner to make a mistake on. I probably explored the grass runoff area of the old hairpin as we're seeing the drivers right towards the end of the top 10 and right outside of it. Going through that old hairpin, I probably explored the grass runoff that you see on your screen more than the actual racetrack. I was going off there so many times. It's a very tricky corner to get right with these radicals, which do have a tendency to understeer, especially in the very early stages of this race. But probably by the end of this race, by the time we hit we're probably coming up on this. This car usually takes a few laps to get the tires heated up, but once you get those tires in the right optimum temperature window for the other tires to be heated up, you'll be golden in this Radical. So it's a very fun driving experience, and we've got a very fun schedule. Oh, never mind. Or as I was going to go over the schedule, we have a mistake there from Damien Guy coming through the chicane. That's a very tricky corner to get right. It's kind of feels like the back of the car has like a pogo stick attached to it. It's hopping up and down so much coming through that chicane. It's very bumpy, very tricky corner to get right. And fortunately for Guy, he makes a mistake coming through there very early on. That'll drop him out of that battle that we were seeing towards the end of the top 10.
Yeah, and at the risk of exposing myself as a Donington fanboy, I got to tell you, this track is fantastic. We're watching the top couple of cars come through the turn 1, 2, 3 down to the what is kind of oddly called the old hairpin, and it is an absolute thrill, especially in these radicals, to bomb down that hill. You can't overslow, but you also can't overcook that critical corner there. Man, Donington is an absolute blast. Here's another example here as we right along with Friedrich, a blind apex of another critical corner coming onto this back straightaway. Donington really well designed, and my half-hour experience lapping this afternoon, these radicals just eat this track up. It was an absolute thrill to fly down that hill.
Speaking of eating up, I saw Vieira eating up some bollards on the inside of the chicane there. So definitely a tricky corner to get right, as I've mentioned multiple times on this broadcast. But this is a fantastic circuit. You mentioned the old hairpin there, which has always been a strange name to me. It was never a hairpin in this track's nearly 100-year existence. This track was first ran as a Grand Prix circuit back in the 30s when it used to be an actual park. Now it's a purpose-built racetrack, one of the oldest and most storied in all the UK, and also one of the best that's here on the Radical schedule. We're seeing a move from Jorge Gonzaga, who's trying to make it up through the field. He goes for a move going through the final corner, which is a very hard corner to spot from my experience. It's kind of a blind entry. You don't really see the corner until you're pretty much right there. So Jorge Gonzaga pulls off the move there on Graf, who moves up into P10. And I believe Gonzaga is probably going to try and make it up into the top 10. He's probably feeling a bit frustrated after that mistake he made very early on. And I'm sure he'll try and make it up into the top 10. You can see Curtis up ahead, a few seconds up the road, actually 1 second up the road at this stage. So I think with the big gap between Curtis and McIntyre, I believe Gonzaga might be just settling for a top 10. But Gonzaga has always shown some good pace in this series. So for all we know, with some unfortunate luck for the drivers up ahead, we could see Jorge Gonzaga sneak farther up the field.
Yeah, we absolutely could. And let's see, right now, where are we looking at? We're watching Wire here coming up behind G, and Gonzaga, a little train developing behind him as we are on lap 5 of 19 here in the opening week of the Radical Challenge. And we didn't quite get to our normal intro here, and Ron, you were going to talk about the schedule a little bit. We've got some great tracks coming up this season. They did a great job of track selection, as we see Curtis is going to loop it there in that very difficult final corner onto the front straight. Ron was talking about that. It is over a crest and completely blind. You have to turn in way before you can see the apex of the corner, and that one biting Curtis as he gets on the throttle a little early and loops it there.
That's a very tough mistake from them. But yeah, going over the schedule, this is a very fantastic schedule. We went over this a little bit in the final 2 rounds of Season 3 here on Apex Racing TV. But yeah, obviously we start the season off here in Donington Park for the first round of the season. Then we move on to Circuit de Magny-Cours, the old Formula 1 circuit that last ran a Formula 1 race. And I believe 2007 or 2008, if anyone's in the chat, they can correct me on that. But that'll be race 2, and then followed by Alton Park, another old school UK track for week 3, and then we have Road America, which used to be the season opener for round 4. Then we go to Spa for week 5, then Road Atlanta for week 6, Brands Hatch, VIR, Jerez, Mount Panorama, Canadian Tire, and to round off the season, as I feel it's fitting to round off the season at the biggest track of them all, we go to the Nordschleife at the Nürburgring. That'll be a fantastic track to run on. We're following Kike Ming right now, so a driver pulling into the pits there. I believe that was Snyder there. Yeah, that's drivers making a few mistakes early on. A very big field. I believe this is the biggest by a wide margin that we've seen so far this week. I was looking through earlier, and 12 drivers were really the max for participation. Obviously, we have the Spa 24, I believe, going on iRacing, so a lot of drivers are switching their attention to that. But for the 19 drivers that have showed up tonight, they are switching their attention and having a bit of a relaxing time here, driving these radicals around this fantastic old-school UK track.
Yeah, absolutely. The Radicals will remain here at Donington, of course, until the changeover on Monday. And if you haven't driven these Radicals, I'd definitely recommend giving one a try. They are absolutely fantastic. Tons of power, tons of mechanical grip, and great sounds coming out of those four-cylinder turbos. Really, really fun cars. And looks like we're about to finish up on lap 7 here. We've got Ming from Vieira, Friedrich, Barry, Kiolis is your top 5, followed by Caruso, Woodward, Hanoi, McIntyre, and Jorge Gonzaga, who has fought his way back up to P10 after qualifying in 9th and having that little off, letting a couple cars through. Then we have Graf, G, Wire, Doys, or interesting. I'm sorry. Apologies in advance. I'm sure I crushed that one. Curtis, Robinson, Larson, and looks like Snyder and Ma are done for the day. We saw Snyder driving into the pits under his own power. Not really sure what went on there, but it appears that he has parked it. Meanwhile, we're looking at Friedrich pressuring Vieira. Of course, Vieira got that P2 away from Friedrich. That's where Friedrich qualified. Friedrich just had that little bobble in the old hairpin on the grass, and that allowed Vieira through. But Friedrich does not look like he's going to give up on that. You see him polishing Vieira's bumper here as we're approaching the back straightaway.
One thing that we'll definitely have to keep an eye on throughout this broadcast and throughout the whole season that we touched on quite a lot during Season 3 and Season 2 for that matter is tire management in this series. Yeah, the tires fall off quite quickly, so a lot of the times some drivers that may persevere in a battle are just the ones that saved up their stuff the best. So I think with Vieira and Friedrich right now driving like bats out of hell right now at this fairly early stage of this race. We're only 8 laps into this 19-lap event here for the Friday race here on the Radical Racing Challenge, the season opener here on Apex Racing TV. So we'll have to keep an eye on how these drivers manage their tires, because that's always been important. I think Friedrich might be the driver that's using up his tires a lot more. He's stuck in that dirty air of Vieira right now, and those tires are probably screaming in pain. Fairly early on this broadcast, we're not even at the halfway mark of this race, so I'm sure Andreas Friedrich's tires right now are feeling the pain, while Vieira right now looks like he's cruising. Definitely not saying that he's having it very easy out there. I'm sure he's pushing too, but right now I think he might have the upper hand in this battle when it comes to tires and on track position.
Yeah, tire management definitely important on these, and these high-speed sweepers. I think we were all observing today during our pre-broadcast practice session. There is a slight tendency for these cars to develop a little push in those high-speed corners. You want to you want to go a little slower than to allow a constant long grinding understeer through these long sweepers, because the tires will fall off on these cars, and you'll find yourself driving a much different Radical SR10 at the end of the race than at the beginning if you're not mindful of tire wear. And here we are still with Vieira leading Friedrich from Barry. They formed a little 3-car train there as Kike Ming has disappeared off into the distance now with a 5-second gap. But this little train, as you see Vieira get a little wiggle there, and he did not get a good exit. Is Friedrich going to be able to take advantage? And here we are coming back onto that front straight through that difficult left-hander, back into turn 1 and getting ready for that long careening dash downhill into the old hairpin. Let's see what Vieira does here with Friedrich all over him.
This is definitely a very hard track to find a way past your fellow competitors. There's only a few real overtaking opportunities on this whole track. Certainly, the old hairpin is not one of those. These cars have a trouble trying to get through this corner just single file, let alone side by side. So anyone that tries to go side by side through there has a death wish. But there's really 3 big overtaking opportunities, I would have to say. Obviously, going through turn 1 is a heavy braking zone, but also in about less than 1 corner's time. Actually, I say that'd be a half a corner. After they get through this long sweeper, when they go onto this back straightaway and then go hard onto the brakes going into the chicane, this will be another overtaking opportunity, but it's very difficult. You have to have a lot of guts to pull off a move there, but this is personally my favorite overtaking opportunity on the entire circuit. It's a heavy braking zone going into this hairpin, but also lends yourself to having the old switcheroo done on you when they get to the final corner, which is also another tight hairpin, fairly similar to this. It looked like we were going to have some battling there. It looked like we were going to have some battling here between Weaver and Gonzaga, I believe it is, going into the chicane, but those drivers stay line astern.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ron, about the overtaking zones here. A pretty difficult track to overtake. Obviously, qualifying very important, and really, I think the formula is just lay behind the person that you're trying to get by. Stay close to them. Let them get them thinking more about you than what's ahead, and wait for a mistake. Very difficult to make uh, an overtake here. Aside from a couple of places that maybe inviting to a dive bomb, but as you pointed out, after that dive bomb frequently end with an over/under, and now Gonzaga, who is trying to work his way back up to his original qualifying position, now has wire all over his back bumper. I don't recall wire from last season. He may be a new face here on the 2100 GMT broadcast, but Wire is definitely polishing that Gonzaga rear bumper hard, and there's contact. My goodness. Got a little, I don't know if he might have overcooked that entry and had a little lock up there, but he was pretty optimistic in that corner entry. Got a little piece of Gonzaga. Fortunately, Gonzaga not turning there, but Wire paying the price for that little bump on the nose.
That was just very unfortunate there. Very simple mistake. And at a track like this, which, as I mentioned last lap, not too many overtaking opportunities. Might see some drivers pull off impatient moves. And this was definitely one for Bruce Wire here. They're going into this corner here. The fairly heavy braking zone. He peeks a wheel in there very late. Unfortunately for him, it just ends in total disaster. I think we should be fortunate that Gonzaga didn't get caught up in that, because that would have been very unlucky for Gonzaga. And if he ulta forward out of the session, I wouldn't really blame him if Gonzaga got collected in that, because he would have probably thought, you know, tonight is just not my night after the mistake early on. And unfortunately, nearly got caught up in that crash. But thankfully for him, he keeps it on the straight and narrow and is currently running P10.
Yeah, glad to see Gonzaga get out of that one. Pretty ill-advised move by Wire. Frankly, it was not room for him to stick it in there. And like I say, he may have overcooked that entry a little bit. It looked like maybe he was intending it pass, but he might not have been. May have just car gotten away from him a little bit there under braking. And glad to see that Gonzaga got out of that one clean. And here we're still watching Vieira, Friedrich, and Barry here in that three-car train. Three cars separated by about 7/10. And boy, Friedrich is consistently fast driver. We watched him all of last season. Very consistent, very good performing driver, and Vieira is not in an enviable position, having Friedrich polishing his bumper with 3 laps to go. And meanwhile, Barry kind of in the popcorn seat here, watching what's developing in front of him. And if Friedrich and Vieira come together, Barry may end up just kind of being gifted P2. We'll see what develops between Vieira and Friedrich here in lap 13.
You bring up a very good point there with Andreas Friedrich, and you pretty much nailed the nail right on the head there, if I can spit my words out in the proper order there. Andreas Friedrich was consistently quick, but he didn't score too many wins on these Friday broadcasts, at least for the Radicals. He, I believe, only scored 1 win on these 12 weeks of broadcasting that we did, and that was to round the season off at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. So Andreas Friedrich has always been a quick driver in my time covering this series, which at this point coming up since the end of season 1 this year. So Andreas Friedrich has always been a very fast driver. He's always been a force to be reckoned with, and he's also been a consistent face in this ever-changing series. But right now, ooh, that's a interesting car gang lap there. I believe that's Robertson there, right on the inside, so he thankfully avoids throwing too much of a wrench into this battle here. But that was still definitely a little bit of a factor. I'm sure Vieira there, if I can spit my words out properly, was probably looking at that lap car and thinking, oh no, don't you dare, please get out of the way. And thankfully for him, he did, because this battle is looking very interesting at the moment. We're 5 laps away from the checkered flag, and right now it's Vieira that has the upper hand, but I'm sure Andreas Friedrich is feeling really annoyed at seeing the back of Vieira's car like he's seen throughout most of this race. And I'm sure Barry as well is probably being a little bit opportunistic here. He's probably licking his lips and hoping these two crash if there's an attempted overtake from Friedrich or a mistake from Vieira. We'll just have to wait and see how this battle plays out in the final 5 laps of the season opener.
Well, and interestingly enough, Ron, we all of last season, we did not really have a lot of lap traffic, and we just saw Robertson get lapped. The next back marker is only about 5 seconds up the track, and these longer shots, you can see Curtis there with Vieira Friedrich and Barry reeling him in. So encountering that back marker is a strong possibility within the next 5 laps, and that in itself might provide Friedrich with the opportunity that he's looking for to retake that P2 that he lost on the first lap.
And looking through the field, there's a lot of faces that we recognize in this series. Certainly, Kike Ming running away with this win right now, over 7 seconds ahead of this battle here. He hasn't been the most consistent member of these broadcasts. We haven't seen too much of him, but whenever he's shown up, he's always been pretty consistent, always up towards the front. And right now, he is pulling away. Actually, just at the fastest lap at a 1:22.9. That's a fantastic lap from him as he sets the fastest lap of this race. That was much quicker than our pace that we showed in the practice session. That's for damn sure. But right now, Kike Ming is pulling away from this, but Vieira, who we haven't seen too much of in this series, is battling with Andres Friedrich, who's one of the forces to be reckoned with and always one of the consistent faces in this series. And we have Barry, who's another face that we've seen a lot of, and some other names that we've seen. Robert Woodward, who we saw a lot of a few seasons ago. He returns after skipping out on a lot of the races from the past 2 seasons. He returns to the series, and just a lot of names looking up and down the field. There's plenty of names that we recognize, and also a lot of names that are fairly new. So it's nice to have some new young blood into the series, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of these drivers show up throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, it really is nice to see some new faces. And again, folks, if you are watching this, first of all, thanks for joining us on Apex Racing TV. Hit that subscribe button and click the notification icon there to make sure that you don't miss any action. We have got nonstop racing action every night of the week. Some of the best esports drivers in the world, some of the best cars, some of the best tracks. And the good thing about this Radical Racing Challenge, this is not a league event. This is not a private event. This is the top split of the public servers for this time slot. We will be here every week, 2100 GMT, broadcasting these races. So buy one of these Radicals, take it for a test drive, and you could test your mettle against some of the best drivers in the world here on Apex Racing TV. So check it out, and you won't be disappointed how these Radicals are driving. Again, we took a spin today, and these cars feel fantastic, especially on tracks like this, Mosport, Road Atlanta, VIR, some of these high-speed tracks that we're going to be seeing this year in this season in the Radical Racing Challenge. So give it a shot. Got nothing to lose.
Yeah, I think you brought up the point there of any of the viewers that want to try this combination out, which I certainly had fun with, and I'm more of an open wheel guy personally, but this was a very fun combination to try. It was nice. Didn't have too many mistakes, and there's a lot of there's a stigma that built with this car after the last 2 seasons of 2022 and then coming into the first 2 seasons of 2023. There's a stigma that built up in the iRacing community that these cars were really bad, and certainly season 2 the other cars kind of drove like wet noodles, but the cars have been improved. The staff at iRacing, along with the people at Radical, have managed to make this car drive a lot better. It's very fun to drive. If anyone would like to give this combination a whirl, you can definitely buy it on iRacing. We're not paid to say that or anything like that. We're just saying from our experience, it's a very fun combination. We always appreciate more racers to talk about in these top split races. And one thing that I want to bring up, a little bit of a gossip here, is there's been discussion in the Radical forums about whether this car should be made free or not, should be made a par-based content. Of course, if anyone is definitely very well venerated, I should say, in the iRacing sphere, then they know that you can call it the problems that the SR10 series faces with you can kind of say fairly dwindling field sizes, is something that the Radical SR8, the old Radical, faced back when that was first introduced. And what iRacing did to fix those field size issues was actually making the car part of base content. So there's been a lot of discussion surrounding that. So I'll pass this off to you, JR. Do you think this car should be a part of base content? And do you think that'll improve the driver situation with these broadcasts?
You know what? I think that is an absolutely fantastic idea, and I think it will do a couple of things, Ron. And I am absolutely not joking when I say that mastery of this car will make you better at any car that you drive. The lack of traction control, lack of ABS, and gobs of power that these cars have will definitely test you. You have to be judicious with the throttle. You have to be careful with your braking. You have to be ready to catch snap oversteer, and the more people that get in these cars, they're great training cars, and they will create better drivers overall. And I can't really recommend this car enough. It is an absolute riot, especially on some of these high-speed corners. I mean, I'm a GT3 driver most of the time, and I can tell you that these radicals get around the track faster than a GT3 car. And generally, my times are about halfway between my GT3 and GTE times. So these cars are absolute rockets. They are a blast. Great sounds coming from that EcoBoost 4-cylinder turbo. And yeah, I would be 100% in favor of getting more people in these cars, because it'll just create more fun and better drivers. And there is Curtis. Looks like he is taking a little trip through the grass there. And we are on, looks like lap 18 now. And we're going to get a little replay here. And who are we looking at? Ashley Curtis. And we're headed down into that backside hairpin behind the pits. And yeah, a little bit too much throttle there. Very easy to do. It's either first or second gear. If you want to use what I call redneck traction control, you come out of there in second. If you want to get a couple extra tenths out, you come out of there in first. And as I said, no TC on these cars. And definitely takes some skill and some patience to get the best exit out of some of these low-speed corners in these radicals. And here is the white flag. Of course, Ming has driven away almost a 10-second gap now. We've got Vieira and Friedrich still glued to each other. Barry shortly behind them. Kiolis, Caruso, Woodward, Hanoi from McIntyre from Gonzaga is your top 10, followed by Grafwire, Guy, Doyes, Robertson, Curtis, it looks like Larson is still running, and Ma and Snyder have parked it. And here is Friedrich. Friedrich wants back that P2. He's still mad at himself over that mistake on turn 1, lap 1 that allowed Vieira through. Is he going to be able to get something done here?
Brought up skill and patience at the start of this lap, and I think those two attributes are shown quite nicely in these two drivers. Vieira has had the skill to keep it ahead of Friedrich, and Friedrich has shown the pace and patience to stay behind and still be fairly calm. I'm sure he'll probably look for a send in the not-too-distant future, but this man, Kike Ming, has put together a fantastic race. The Spaniard here driving in the number 2 car, stealing my number, but I don't have much of a problem with it, because even though he has number 2 on his car, he has been number 1 all day. He's going to cross the finish line and take the win to kick off this season in pretty dominating fashion. But now we have the battle here between Andreas Friedrich and Vieira. They are very close there. I believe they might have gone side by side. They're continuing to go side by side as they approach the finish line, but Vieira staying ahead to grab that runners up spot. Friedrich stays behind to complete your podium, and that's Barry behind.
Wow, and what a performance by Kike Ming. Ron, he put down a 122.8. I know that you were hitting the high 125s, and I was pretty happy after being able to tickle that after half an hour. But we are woefully 2 seconds off the pace of Kike Ming, who was untouchable in this one, winning by 10 seconds. My goodness.
I think that might be part of the reason why we're in the commentary booth, JR. We'll let the professionals, you can call them professionals. Some of these might be hobbyist drivers, and certainly this game, you can make a living doing both. You can be a hobbyist on iRacing, that's fun, and you can make a living off of iRacing, and it'll still be fun. So this car is definitely very fun. It's very challenging, and it leads to some fantastic racing. So a lot of mistakes from these drivers to kick the season off after the 1-week break for week 13. Some of these drivers are starting to kick off the rust. We can call this race 1 a bit of a rust off event. Shaking off the rust off of their sim rigs, and right now it put on a fantastic race. So even though it was a shake the rust off kind of race, it was still fantastic to watch.
Yeah, and next week looks like we're hitting. Oh, wait a minute. Let me run through the results now. A little bit, little discombobulated here, but again, we have Kike Ming with that dominant performance, setting the fast lap times down into the 122s, which is flying around here. In P2, Vieira, Andreas Friedrich in P3 gave Vieira a run for his money, but once he let Vieira through on lap 1, he was not able to punch it back through despite his valiant efforts to do so. James Barry in P4 spent most of the race watching that fight between Vieira and Friedrich. Johnny Kiolis Caruso, Woodward, Hanoi, Jeff McIntyre in P9. Jorge Gonzaga had that little lawn mowing incident off of the old hairpin. He'll end up in P10. DeGraff, Wire, G, Doyes, Robinson, Curtis, Larson, and Samuel Ma. Yeah, there we go. There's one more. Ryan Snyder from the U.S. there. A couple of American flags woefully low in the standings. Snyder binned it early, but that is your 19-car field. And that was a pretty good race. Ron, I think it was fun to see some names of folks that we have not seen over the last season. And obviously, wow, Kike Ming sort of out of nowhere, as you pointed out. We're used to seeing Friedrich up front. Barry finished a little higher than we're used to seeing him. And Jorge Gonzaga struggled a little bit when we're used to seeing him a little closer to the top 5.
Yells, we could call this broadcast a name game, really, because we had new names to get used to and new positions, and we also had some new names just period that we haven't seen too much of on these Radical broadcasts. Certainly there are a lot of drivers, probably half the grid were drivers that I have not seen before in the series, but still a very talented pack of racers that we have in this Radical Racing Challenge. If anyone watching this stream on Apex Racing TV would like to tune in for the rest of the season, you know where to find us. You can tune in for the Magny Core round for round 2 of the season in 1 week's time on September the 22nd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I believe it's 10 p.m. UTC or 2100 UTC, however you want to work it out. And then it's 2 p.m. Pacific for these broadcasts on the West Coast. And then let me look through the rest of the schedule here on Apex Racing TV. We also have the ARL GT3 Trophy, the penultimate round, round 9 at Donington Park. Exact same track we raced at. That'll be an interesting race. We have a great championship battle forming in that series, so if you want to tune in, that'll be on Tuesday, September the 19th. We have a 3 p.m. EST, 8 p.m. UTC, and then 12 p.m. Pacific. And then this is just for the U.S. audience because these races are held late in the night as far as I'm concerned because I have the sleep schedule of an old man. So we have the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series. We have round 2 at Road America in 2 weeks' time on September the 17th. That's a Wednesday. You can tune into that broadcast at 9:10 Eastern Time, 6:10 Pacific. And then for the Rikmatech World Challenge round 2 at Fuji, that was a fantastic race we had 2 weeks ago actually it was more than 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, thanks to week 13. We had a fantastic kickoff to that season, and hopefully they can continue that fantastic racing this upcoming Monday, September the 18th at 8 p.m. EST and 5 p.m. Pacific. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up here on Apex Racing TV, and the Radical Racing Challenge is one of them. And I think if anyone had some doubts about how well this series is, I think we silenced those quite nicely because this was absolutely amazing to watch.
It was an absolute pleasure. And speaking of Apex Racing TV, Ron, Apex Racing is not just about these fantastic broadcasts. We have Apex Racing Academy, which is an add-on to your VRS account. All the features that you're accustomed to with VRS, track guides, one-on-one and group coaching, and setups. So if you're chasing that elusive 1 or 2 tenths and want to get some additional advantages, go ahead and add that Apex Racing Academy to your VRS subscription today. So that is going to do it for round 1 of the Radical Racing Challenge. I am J.R. Gregory for Ron Mons and Joshua Wilkie. Have a great Friday, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week in France.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.